All right, let's jump right in. We are going to break down a real estate playbook that doesn't just deal with complicated situations. It actually thrives on them. This is a deep dive into a strategy that targets those messy, hair-on-fire deals that most investors would run away from, and it shows you how to turn them into seven-figure profits. Take a look at this number, $230,000. That's the profit one investor, a guy named Alejandro Mendoza, made in a single month using this exact strategy. That's not a year's work, not even 6 months. That's 1 month. So the big question is, how on earth did he pull that off?
Well, the secret is in this little niche called curative title. And what's really important to get here is that this isn't about flipping houses the way you normally think about it. It's about fixing messy ownership. You know, imagine a house where the owner died without a will. Suddenly, the property is in this legal limbo with a bunch of different relatives involved. Curative title is just the process of untangling that whole web so the house can actually be sold again.
So here's the game plan. We're going to walk through this whole 6-part playbook. We'll start with what a messy deal even is, then get into how to find them, how to filter them, how to actually contact the owners who seem impossible to reach, the very unique way you buy the property, and then, of course, the big takeaways you can use yourself. Okay, first up, the whole foundation of this thing is actually pretty simple. You go where there's zero competition. Seriously, most investors hear words like multiple heirs or deceased owner, and they are out. They drop the lead and move on. This strategy, that's exactly where it starts. And that creates this environment which has massive profit potential because almost nobody else is even playing.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got your traditional investor. They want a clean, simple deal. One owner, ready to sign. The easy button. But the curative title investor, over on the right, they're actively looking for the complete opposite. A deceased owner, heirs scattered all over the country, a tangled legal mess. That's their sweet spot. They're not just buying a house, they're solving a huge family and legal problem that no one else wants to touch.
So, where do you even find these properties? Well, the answer isn't buying those stale old lists from data companies. The real gold is in pulling fresh data directly from the source, city and county public records. This is step 1 to finding properties that all the other investors' automated systems will completely miss. And specifically, this playbook really hones in on 4 main lists. First up, code compliance lists from the city, properties with violations. Second, county tax delinquent lists for properties that are way behind on taxes. Third, fire damage lists, which you can also get from the city. And finally, vacant property lists. All of these are huge red flags for neglect, often because the owner, sadly, has passed away.
Now, once you have these huge lists with thousands of names, you need a system to find the needle in the haystack, right? This is not about just randomly smiling and dialing. It's about using a very precise, automated workflow to filter for the deals that have the biggest profit potential before you ever even pick up the phone.
And here's the exact process, which is usually handled by virtual assistants. First, they process the record, just pulling all that initial data. Second, they run a quick equity calculation using public info. Third, and this is key, they check if that equity hits a specific number. If it doesn't, boom, the lead is junk right away. Only if it makes the cut does it get passed on to the acquisitions team.
So what's that magic number? It's $75,000. For a lead to even be considered, it's got to have at least 75 grand in estimated equity. This step is absolutely critical. It makes sure there's enough meat on the bone to cover all the legal fees, pay out multiple heirs, and still leave a fat profit margin at the end. Anything less is just a waste of time. Okay, so you've got a great, qualified lead, but the owner is deceased and the heirs are who knows where. How do you actually get hold of them? This is where the relentless 10-touch system comes into play. It's a super persistent, multi-channel approach that's designed to work when everyone else has already given up and moved on.
And we're not talking about 1 or 2 calls here. It's a daily 10-attempt sequence. The team calls every single phone number they can find for every potential heir, every single day for 10 days straight. And the real insight here is that the deals almost always get closed on attempts number 8, 9, or even 10, long after any competitor has thrown in the towel.
And you have to get incredibly creative. In one case, an heir was ignoring every single call and message. So the investor found him on LinkedIn, which led to his work blog, which led to the news network he worked for. The final successful attempt, the real Hail Mary, was an email to his boss, the editor-in-chief, just explaining the situation. You know what happened? The heir called back within a few hours. So you finally made contact. Now how do you actually buy the property? This is another huge difference in this playbook. You don't try to get all 5, 6, maybe 10 heirs to agree on one price for the whole house. That's a nightmare. Instead, you buy their individual ownership stakes, their deeds, one by one for cash.
And to do this all by the book, you rely on a really important document, the affidavit of heirship. Basically, think of this as a legal document filed in the public record that officially lays out who all the legal heirs of the deceased owner are. It's the tool that connects all the dots and allows you to legally buy up their individual shares until you eventually own 100% of the property. Okay, so let's see how all these pieces actually come together in a real-world deal. This case study is going to show you the incredible speed and profit that's possible when you really execute this playbook the right way.
The total cash invested in this deal was just $10,500. $10,000 of that went straight to the only heir, and $500 was spent on an exterminator to get some raccoons out of the attic. That's it. That's the entire out-of-pocket investment.
In the timeline? Get this, just 35 days. From that first Hail Mary contact with the heir's boss, all the way to closing the deal. This kind of speed is possible because you're often closing directly with the heirs first, buying up their deeds, and then consolidating the ownership later outside of a traditional slow-moving title company process.
And the result of that tiny investment and that super quick turnaround, a net profit of $55,000. That is the power of finding a motivated seller who has a really complex problem that only you are equipped and willing to solve.
So, let's just boil this all down to the core principles. What really makes this whole system work, and what can you take away from it no matter what business you're in?
First, focus on a niche where the complexity itself creates a huge barrier to entry for everybody else. Second, you have to have the capital ready to go so you can act decisively and close fast. Third, your value isn't a lowball offer. It's being a problem solver for situations that others can't or won't handle. And finally, and this is a big one, relentless systematic persistence is absolutely 100% non-negotiable.
Which really brings us to one last thought. You know, most of us are trained to find the simplest, easiest path forward. But as this playbook shows, sometimes the biggest rewards are found by deliberately running toward the mess that everyone else is running away from. So the question for you is, in your own work, in your own field, are you willing to look there?